highlight the S&P 500. Again, we had this gap. You always want to watch a gap. Is it a gap and go, gap and fill, gap and trap? We gapped down. It was a gap and go intraday. We'll still be watching to see if we attempt to fill this gap at some point. Maybe we go lower and come back up here. We'll see if we attempt to fill it with the Fed or not. Again, I believe NASDAQ has likely peaked. S&P, the jury's still out here. But we have this bullish divergence, and it may not be done yet. You got a horizontal support just a little bit lower on the 15-minute chart. Watching to see if we can attempt to find a bottom and then eventually get back above the 200. If you do, you can get a recovery. And if you do, I'll be watching gap resistance and the gap fill. Again, no guarantee we do that immediately. We may have to go lower before we get any attempted meaningful rebound. Warning you about a lower high for NASDAQ. A higher high for S&P, and they diverged. We'd start seeing a turn the upper channel line. We hit the upper channel line. I told you we may hit it one more time. Just may turn. We talked about that yesterday. I told you that the momentum had started to flip on Nvidia, and that meant NASDAQ's momentum was likely going to flip. I talked about that at great length and detail yesterday. I'll touch on it again today. Get this horizontal support here. Again, if we go a little bit lower or whatever, you can come back up here. You could end up getting a head and shoulders. Again, just blow past this area. Again, we might have to get a bigger sell-off before we attempt a recovery. And again, this gap opens the door to being filled as we go towards the Fed meeting, or maybe with the Fed. We'll be watching if we get a bigger sell-off immediately or if we attempt some kind of recovery. But I'll be watching this area, and if we do turn down on the RSI on the 15-minute chart here, again, you can form a little nice divergence that might try to form a bottom here, and you got a possible head and shoulders. No guarantee it plays out. No guarantee we could just blow past this level of support, but it is a possibility. So just something to pay attention to. Divergences are playing out on the intraday charts. Again, here it is on the 30-minute chart. 60-minute chart. Again, I talked about momentum. Remember, we had the little tiny divergence right here, and we rolled over right at the open, gapping lower. Had a gap and go. We'll see what happens. Now, NASDAQ is down at the 200 period. S&P is nowhere near it, and it's just above the trend line. S&P is nowhere near the channel, but we did turn off this level right here. And again, I told you we might go up. We closed just under it. I told you we might go up and then turn, or we might attempt to sell off if Nvidia drags NASDAQ 100 down, as I talked about yesterday. But we become oversold now with momentum. So again, we'll be watching to see if we try to find a bottom or go a little bit lower towards horizontal support or blow past it to maybe to the lower end of the cloud or the support and resistance line and try to get some kind of rebound. We'll be watching folds, but again, I told you we were going to go up after this consolidation right here. Likelihood to the upper end of the channel was connecting these levels. We overthrew that level, and again, channels reshape all the time, which again have one. Also, if you connect these levels here, you have a rising wedge, which again, we've come right to that trend line in the daily time frame here on the 60-minute chart. You have to excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit. I was camping in the mountains in the night air, so got a little sick. Sorry about that. And again, NASDAQ momentum is oversold as well. So we'll see if we try to find a bottom. No guarantee. Again, I've been warning you about this. Really, people ignore warning signs seen on social media. And when it happens, like the drop that we're seeing with Nvidia, people are in shock. They're in denial. Likely going to see this top before the Fed pivots, which I believe will be in September. So a topping process. By the way, NASDAQ's forming a similar divergence on the RSI. And again, MACD, it may not be done yet. But again, we could go a little bit lower. Support at the rising trend line. We may back test the broken trend line on the chart, which you'll see later in the video. We broke down from the rising wedge. Just wanted to tell you, again, we got these divergences. Again, we could still go lower. They may not be done yet. May start a brand new fresh divergence if the MACD rolls over here. But again, we'll be looking to see if we try to find support around the 200 on the 60-minute chart for the NASDAQ, or if we have to go to the lower channel before we get any kind of attempted recovery. We'll have to fill the gap. Not fill the gap. I was warning you back up at the top. I had the warning signs. See in this video. Again, signals are now playing out correctly. The signs we had in the weekly time frame. I'll talk about the NASDAQ later in the video, but again, if we don't find support here at the 200, you got the horizontal support, got the head and shoulders here, so we'll be talking about that. But things playing out just as we expected with NASDAQ, and I've been warning you. My signals warned back up at the top with this divergence that a top was forming. We're now seeing that play out. The signals were correct. We'll see if we try to bounce off this trend line, which I'll be talking about shortly. I warned you multiple point diversions had developed. I told you with yesterday's close, we might hit the red trend line or try to go make it to the black one here. But again, and then turn down, or go up to that red trend line, turn down. If the NASDAQ started selling off with the Nvidia, if momentum started turning, again, we could turn immediately. We already hit the upper boundary, the red trend line there, and the multiple point divergences are playing out nicely on the MACD. I'll talk about the breakdown of the rising wedge on NASDAQ. And again, we've had the same thing form on the S&P, but we're finding support at that lower boundary. Let me show you. We've broken it here. S&P came down close just below the 10-period moving average, did not get a reversal of conditions. Momentum quite shift yet with S&P, so again, we'll see if we get that immediately tomorrow, or if we bounce off this trend line, maybe we attempt to try to fill the gap. We'll be watching. Again, the signals I've been talking about, divergences in the daily time frame, the weekly charts, now playing out. We were told, oh, that's not going to happen. It's going to happen. NASDAQ breaking the rising wedge, S&P coming down to it. We'll see if S&P breaks it and we keep going, or if we bounce here and we attempt a recovery for the short term and maybe try to fill the gaps. We'll see what happens. No guarantee we fill these gaps immediately. We may do it at a later date. We may do it immediately. There's no guarantee we do it. Gap and go, we could just gap down and just keep going. Get a rebound. There's going to be sellers lurking directly overhead, likely forming a topping process here ahead of the Fed meeting. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. You could donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you could take a moment and help out, I would really appreciate it if you could step up to the plate and let me know that you want this information. My indicators, and again, I would encourage you to watch the video all the way through, sharing with you my indicators that warned this was going to happen. Please support the channel. Again, I turned down all the offers to have sponsors and sell you stuff and send you to websites. I don't want to sell you stuff. I want people to sell you a bunch of stuff you don't need. I ask that you help out, but I do need your help in order to make it work. If you could take a moment to do that at this time, I would really, really appreciate it. It would really be encouraging to hear from you. Thank you for your consideration for that. Switch charts here with the S&P. Again, the divergence I talked about. Oh, gee, now playing out. Again, do we just start seeing the bottom fall out of this thing, or do we attempt some kind of recovery to try to fill the gap? We'll be watching. MACD did not roll over yet. We'll see if it does. We've had it happen on the NASDAQ. We continue to see distribution on the NASDAQ. We had that in the weekly time frame. We had that little doji spinning top-looking candlestick. I told you if we got a red bar this week, it would be confirmed. Down 2.62% for the week. We had a 3% drop. Today's session, we'll see how we close by the end of the week, but oh gee, we're moving out of the 70 level, below it. I thought this time was different. MACD, again, by the time it rolls over here in the weekly time frame, you're going to have a significant drop. We have this rising wedge in the weekly time frame here. Again, pretty good chance we've got a peak with NASDAQ. The only other thing it could do is it could start to sell off and then come back up right here and slam up into this trend line again, if we get a divergence on the awesome oscillator rather than have it go negative in the daily time frame. But again, if Nvidia's peaked, good chance, and the semiconductors, good chance NASDAQ has. NASDAQ was turning off this channel, going back to the pandemic low here in the weekly time frame. S&P down just under 0.5% for the week so far. Again, we sold off over 1% during today's session, 1.09, I believe it was. Again, have seen these divergences form, and you've got the rising wedge, just like on NASDAQ. You've got the divergence down here on the MACD. These are going to produce a reversal, either top ahead of the Fed or with the Fed. S&P watching the awesome oscillators get more selling, or if we attempt a relief rally before the weekends or not. Guarantee we have that happen. It's only closed just under 10%, but nevertheless, again, here we are at the 200. If we do get rejection here, or go a little bit higher and get rejection, we could come back down and fill today's gap and back test the triangle here. Again, move back to the moving averages. We are now getting a bullish arrangement of the moving. The 10 and 20 are now pushing up here through the 50-period moving average. So bullish realignment is trying to take place here with the moving averages. So again, the reversal signals I got on the NASDAQ, they're now playing out beautifully. I told you that back up at the top. And there's a very good chance NASDAQ has topped, possibly S&P 500. We could see this topping process form as we go into the Fed meeting. Again, no guarantee we fill the gap right now. I'm telling you it's possible, but it's something I'm watching. We got a reversal of conditions. Momentum shifted today for the NASDAQ. So we'll be watching, do we attempt to fill the gap or not? Keep going down before we get any kind of meaningful bounce. And again, we might continue down to the 50-period moving average. Again, you've got the trend line, break it. I showed you on the middle line. We could bounce off that and back test the broken trend line of the rising wedge on the daily chart, current lower boundary of the trend line. I'll show you that in just a second. But again, I've been warning you, again, momentum has begun to wane here as we had the CPI sell-off. And again, taken out the 10, we've taken out the cloud and taken out the 20, and momentum has shifted. And I've been warning you, signals were going to begin to play out, and they have. Now, again, the next move, we can go lower here, or we can start down at some of the support levels I've been talking about. There's always the possibility of a divergence here later, or confirming a lower high. But if Nvidia has peaked and the semiconductors have peaked, there's a good chance that NASDAQ has peaked. Just keep that in mind. But the signals here in the daily time frame for NASDAQ, now getting the reversal of conditions, momentum now flipping. Signals I warned you about back up at the top are playing out and now getting validated with momentum shifting. Watching to see if we get a red bar by the end of the week. Some oscillator, weekly chart for NASDAQ at that topping tail and the spinning top looking candlestick last week. And I told you to be looking for a red bar this week to get an evening star. We talked about that over the weekend, and that is what is happening. Just looking diversions here on the MACD and on the oscillator. Again, I'll be looking to see if we get a red bar by the end of the week or not. We'll see if we attempt a recovery or not. If we attempt a recovery ahead of the Taiwan's semiconductor earnings, then maybe we sell off with it if we get a rebound ahead of it. Saying if we continue to sell off, start to rebound, maybe that's a catalyst that gives us a rebound, which again, that would be during the Friday session. Happens. Do we start a rebound tomorrow or get one on Friday? We'll see what happens. P weekly here. First red bar. I warned you this was coming. First red bar on the awesome oscillator. MACD is still not rolling over. Stochastic did, and again, we're confirming this divergence with yesterday's high. Got a red bar, no reversal of conditions yet. We'll see if we get it tomorrow or if we attempt to rebound and fill the gap first. NASDAQ got it today, and again, you got to close below the cloud to get a reversal of conditions. Got a red bar, but no change in the color of the cloud yet for the S&P 500. The NASDAQ dropped 3%, S&P dropped 1.39%. The Dow was up, disguising the distribution that's going on. Oh, the Dow, it's making new highs. Yet we have the distribution with the tech sector. Only rotation. Small caps, it's only rotation. It's a bull trap for the small caps. Probably the biggest bull trap in history, because we're seeing distribution with the tech sector. It's going to drag the whole market down eventually. If Nvidia goes down and the NASDAQ goes down, the whole market's going to go down in flames. Now, this is a NASDAQ 60-minute chart. I showed you this earlier in the week and told you, again, we're going up towards the golden pocket. I told you we'd likely hit those 78.6 Fibonacci and turn down. We did that right on the nose. Okay, and I'll show you that chart in just a moment on the 60-minute chart. This is a 60-minute chart. Set up a lower high, and then we began to drift lower. Bars turning back to red. Try to turn back to gray, really just showing sideways, but the trend turned it back to bearish. We had that sell-off most of the day for the NASDAQ, and then pretty much closed flat. NASDAQ has been warning we're going to go lower, but again, really warning signs that I've been talking about in every single video. Yesterday, I talked about that we had the momentum shift on Nvidia yesterday, and we got it today on NASDAQ, and I warned you that was going to happen. In the 60-minute chart, again, your lower high, your lower low, your sell signals over here and so over here. So again, we'll see if we attempt to get some kind of rebound to come back and fill the gap at some point the weekends. And again, maybe it'll be surrounding the Taiwan semiconductor earnings, possibly other earnings or some other catalyst, but we'll see if we get a rebound. I think there's probably a pretty good shot that's going to be the case. I just want to watch a gap. When you get a gap, do you get a gap and go? Today was a gap and go on an intraday basis where we gapped down and we just kept going. You can get a gap and go. You can get a gap and fill. It could end up being a gap and fill if we come back and fill the gap. Back over here, we could fill the gap. Gap and trap is where you gap down and then you move in the other direction and you start the trend completely reverses. This is a 60-minute chart. Signals are bearish. We'll see if we rebound and fill the gap. I think you probably have a pretty good shot of it. The other day when I was talking about going up and hitting the 78.6 Fibonacci, I pointed out here that the background was still red 60-minute time frame. I told you it was likely a counter trend. Gray shaded area is telling us, hey, something big is getting ready to happen, and it did. We have this sharp gap lower. Now take a look at this. This is longer and show you the semiconductor signals because we got more information today. It's important information that I'm looking at, so I want to share it with you. Hopefully you'll take the time to look at it because I think it's really important stuff. But just quickly, we've got the sell signals going on here with the S&P. But momentum has not shifted to validate it yet. We are getting a red bar. The momentum line has not shifted yet. We have a divergence here with momentum, and we have one in the more recent price action right here with yesterday's high. We're watching to see if we attempt to fill the gap, or do we start seeing the trend signals and momentum begin to flip with S&P following NASDAQ's lead, following the lead of Nvidia. NASDAQ daily chart, I've been warning you that, again, I've got reversal signals that were forming. I'm playing these signals. I told you they would need to be confirmed with momentum shifting, and I told you that was likely going to happen this week. I told you we had a good shot of it happening Monday or Tuesday. It happened Wednesday, gapping lower. Now the signals turned bearish. But we've done something here that we haven't done with the other sell-offs over here and over here. Here we couldn't flip the trend. We found support at these levels. Here we couldn't flip the trend. Again, these were just corrected moves. Here we are flipping the trend. Now we're probably going to get some kind of rally or go lower and get some kind of rebound back up. I try to carve out a bottom, finish carving out a bottom at some point tomorrow, early in the session or throughout the session, and then we'll rebound, probably begin a rebound and maybe start getting a bigger rebound, possibly with the Taiwan Semiconductor earnings that are after the bell on Thursday. That could help the semiconductor ETF rebound back up, could help the NASDAQ and Nvidia and all of them. Nvidia has now got a confirmed reversal with our bearish engulfing, a confirmed and follow through. I'll show you that. Just wanted to tell you again, I told you yesterday that Nvidia already had the momentum shift yesterday, and I told you a good chance NASDAQ was going to have it happen today, and it did. We've got this divergence played that is now playing out. I told you when we had the sell-off right here, this bar right here, we began to see distribution. Rallies are being sold, and again, we got these little topping tails, and now you're getting this gap lower. Rallies are being sold, right up on very, very light volume ahead of the holiday and on into the reversal with the CPI data. So again, the signals were correct. I'm starting to see the reversal in the weekly time frame, but because the market takes its time doing what it's going to do, and again, my signals, I keep telling you, they're bullish. Now they're bearish here for NASDAQ. I told you the warning signs were present right here, and we've had them present on the weekly chart. Because the market takes its time doing what it's going to do, then people get lulled into a false sense of security and start believing, no, well, it's not going to happen. These signals were likely about to play out. Again, we got the little red circle warning that a possible top had formed. We got the sell signals. I talked about this. A little X meant a term top for momentum. We're getting another little T here with the sell signal and the reversal today. Now we're taking out the cloud here, but look what's happening. Look what's happened now here on the NASDAQ. See this little gray shaded area that's formed? As we're now 2 weeks away from the Fed meeting, we're now starting to see this form. Last time we had it over here, right here, and right here, and over here. Again, it's warning something big is about to happen. Here, it was a drop. Here, it was a bottom and a rally. Here, after the sideways move, it was another rally. Now, when we're seeing the bearish signals, it's probably that we're going to be setting up. Maybe we go lower and then again begin to try to fill the gap, but we're probably going to be setting up for a bigger move down, move closer and closer towards the Fed meeting. The signals were correct. And by the way, I told you that Bitcoin, remember I told you Bitcoin had bottomed in early July and that recently got confirmation last week of the reversal, and I told you that Bitcoin was likely going to rally back up. It rallied back up big. 3%. Actually, it went a little bit higher because that was including today's rally. I told you the market's going to play catch up to Bitcoin. It's the asset with the most volatility. See Nvidia and NASDAQ right behind Bitcoin. And again, you don't think that's going to happen. You don't believe that that's possible? Well, hey, go talk to your fellow trader that's trading cryptocurrency, and they didn't see it coming. It hit them like a freight train. And again, Bitcoin dropped nearly 30%, 27.5%. I predicted a bottom and a rebound. It has now done that. But again, it's likely a counter trend unless the bulls can turn it around. They've lost the 20-week moving average, which it's turning down off of right now. It might get above it, but I'm just telling you, Bitcoin is a huge red flag for the stock market, as I keep talking about. Again, the signals got it right. The signals are now bearish. We can still go up and fill the gap. We got the lower high, as I was predicting, to the, again, the 78.6 Fibonacci of this decline with the CPI sell-off. And now we got the lower high and the lower low. So again, we'll see if we go a little bit lower and get a bounce, or if we get a bounce immediately. But again, you could try to rally the Taiwan Semiconductor earnings. That happens. I'll be watching to see if momentum starts going negative, or if we attempt to rebound. Again, we could confirm a lower high. We'll be watching the gap closely. Momentum flipped today, and trend signal flipped to a sell signal today. As I keep saying, there's a very good chance that NASDAQ has topped. Nvidia has topped back on June 20th, then good chance NASDAQ is topping right now. See the momentum line turning red today? I told you that when that happens, again, good chance you're going to start a bigger sell-off. Now over here, we went red and went back. Here we went red and went back, and those were sideways moves. Here we're taking off a trend, so it's likely you're going to get a trending move. Now, how big the trending move will depend, how big it will be, will depend on if we get a bigger sell-off with Nvidia going into the Fed meeting, or just kind of sell off and stall out a little bit as we move towards the Fed. We'll be watching, but you got sell signals now. Momentum is now bearish on NASDAQ. The trend is now bearish on NASDAQ. And again, the signals got it right yet again. They warn of corrections. They warn of reversals. Good shot. This is going to be a reversal. I showed you the Nvidia chart yesterday. The momentum had flipped yesterday, and I told you that if that happens, we could see it with the NASDAQ today. And that was, the title of my video is that, the theme where we're going to see the NASDAQ follow the shift in momentum with Nvidia. Now the trend is shifting here. It's diverging with the S&P or with NASDAQ. It's making a lower high. That's a huge red flag. The semiconductors made a higher high, and they formed a negative diversion. At NASDAQ with the CPI sell-off was going to go up and get a Fibonacci retracement. I told you it was going to bounce. I got that right. Told you it was going to get a lower high. Got that right. Told you it was likely going to turn at the 78.6 Fibonacci in the golden pocket. That was correct. I was looking for a lower high. I told you it might try to do this and then go down. Might go down immediately if we see NASDAQ follow Nvidia's lead today, as Nvidia got that shift in momentum. The divergence was correct. We confirmed a lower high. That was correct. And now we have a lower low. Could find support here around the 200 on the 60-minute chart, or go lower. Again, I've been talking about coming back to the support level, and you've got a possible head and shoulders. If I just zoom out a little bit, you can see it right here. If we go down a little bit more, we might go down a little bit more, and then attempt to rebound in this area, or just under the 200, just above this horizontal support level. But I'll be watching this area to see if we attempt some kind of recovery. And if we do attempt a recovery, again, do we go back and fill the gap, or do we go back to this low right here? Again, we'll be watching. We may not fill the gap. There's no requirement we do. But NASDAQ did have a nasty sell-off, predicting that this was going to happen. The sell signals I showed you and the weekly charts, that dropped 300 points today, down 600 points, down 3%, got it backwards, down just under 3%. So again, we'll be watching to see if we kind of carve out a bottom here soon, or if we try to bottom around the 200. But again, you could keep going down. But right now, you have a gap and go so far. I'm warning you in the videos, once we get the lower high, we can start moving back towards the 200, back towards the trend line of support of the channel that I've been coming down to the 200 and coming down here. We've become very, very oversold on NASDAQ. It's dropped 3% in one day, gapping lower. So again, if we try to fill the gap or move back to attempt to do it, we could move back towards the cloud, but you might still go lower. We're hitting the 200 and you're coming back towards this trend line right here. This trend line right here is right with this horizontal support right here. And then the possible neckline is directly underneath that right here. So again, maybe we get a slanted neckline. If the right shoulder does form, you'd have a left shoulder, a head formation, and then a right shoulder maybe up here, and maybe it'll be lopsided. Maybe we don't come down to the neckline and it is a slanted kind of a neckline. So we'll see what happens. And again, directly below, we have the rising trend line. So we'll be watching that of the channel. Again, I told you there was a very good chance the NASDAQ has peaked. It could be forming a topping process going into the Fed meeting. Rally up and we make another lower high without breaking the trend line right now, then we can come back, get a lower high, and then come back and break it. And again, we could see a topping process form on NASDAQ and S&P ahead of the FOMC meeting 2 weeks from today. We've now become very, very oversold here, so I'll be watching, whoops, wrong tool. We've become very oversold here, so I'll be watching to see if we begin to recycle back up with momentum. It was the divergence that gave us this peak. I talked about that at the time, and we confirmed a lower high. I talked about that at the time at the 78.6 Fibonacci we've just looked at. Again, back at the top, the warning signals, the reversal signals were present there on the daily chart. I talked about those signals at the time. I'm playing those signals, and those signals being proven correct. But when this channel goes, we're going to have a much, much bigger sell-off. We'll probably rebound near the trend line or here at the 200, one or the other. In all likelihood, maybe we overthrow the trend line again if we start back to include the shadow. And here, I've included the shadow here, excluded it here. And again, these things can adjust the channel. But again, I think that we'll try to bottom here. Or again, if we include the shadow, maybe just a little bit lower here. Including the shadow just directly under that level, right about there. So again, I'll just be looking at these levels, and then I can exclude the shadow here, and you'll still have a parallel channel. I'll talk more about momentum in a moment with the NASDAQ, but again, just wanted to point out here, again, I talked to you about this peak here with Nvidia, and I told you it is very likely that Nvidia has topped. And I told you because it is diverging with NASDAQ. It got a lower high, we got a rising wedge, we got that bearish engulfing candlestick. Yesterday, it got the confirmation to the bearish engulfing. Today, it got the follow through, and now we have a lower high and a lower low taking out this low and getting that follow through. Here's the FOMC meeting over here, and I talked about this scenario where again maybe we get a sell-off going into the balance of the summer on into early fall maybe. Where I believe in September we're going to get September 18th the Fed cutting rates. We start selling off with Nvidia, and the market could get a bounce going into that meeting or with that meeting. Maybe we get the meeting here and we get a bounce with it. But again, watch my video yesterday. Those pivots when the Fed cuts rates believes, oh, here we go, and bottom falls out of the stock market. They believed the same thing back in 2000. They believed the same thing in 2007 and 8 there, financial crisis, institutions on the shows and you know how bullish it's going to be and we're not going to have a recession and all this stuff and give a bunch of Kool-Aid for the retail investors and buying things up on very, very light volume, and now the institutions are selling. They'll probably let them buy it up again. We're coming to the 50-period moving average here with Nvidia. We'll see what happens if we go a little bit lower, but again, be watching the gap today, especially as we go into the Friday session on Thursday after the bell. We'll have the Taiwan Semiconductor earnings. Tesla, Nvidia down 8.70% for the week. I've been showing you this chart over and over again. Again, we got the topping tail last week. Told you it was going to happen. That, again, the topping tail here was likely the peak, and we were going to get a lower high. Told you the same thing for NASDAQ, that we were looking for the lower high last week. On the 60-minute chart here, on the weekly chart, I was looking for a lower high in the weekly time frame. I've talked about this, shown you this chart many, many times, and now it's playing out. We got a topping tail in the form of a shooting star last week, and that's now being confirmed. But the week is still young. We'll see by the end of the week, will it be confirmed? I believe it will be. We'll be watching to see if we attempt to fill the gap, maybe with earnings or something else, the Fed meeting or something like that, that we fill it at a later date. Gap on NASDAQ, you got a gap on Nvidia. Just want to, again, show you this chart another time here because, again, we had the Semiconductor ETF get the bearish engulfing, back-to-back bearish engulfing. We got the lower high, that set up after the CPI sell-off, just like the NASDAQ did, gapping lower. And again, coming down towards the 50-period moving average. NASDAQ did the same thing. The conductor's down 7.12% today. I warned you this was going to happen. I talked about this, spent a long time in the video talking about this yesterday. Seeing momentum in the trend. We'll be watching the gap. Again, we'll see if we go back up and fill the gap. May go lower first, but again, do we get a gap fill, an attempted gap fill at some point? We'll see. But you have a bearish MACD with a divergence at the upper Bollinger Bands, and you got the same thing here with the RSI. No, time is different because AI is going to change the world. That's the same thing they said about the internet and the dot-com stocks and technology back in the bursting of the tech bubble. Time is different. No, it's not. Nvidia is actually going to get a lot of competition that's going to drive it down, and it's probably going to end up dropping 70 to 90% the next bear market here, which I believe has already begun for Nvidia, as I've been saying. Got a good chance that the bear market has already started here with the semiconductors and with the NASDAQ. Quickly, a couple other things about NASDAQ. I've been warning you about this divergence on prime parameter, talking about it at the top there, got it at the rebound with the lower high that I was predicting, and it played out beautifully along with my other sell signals. But people want the fast food at the drive-thru. They want it now. But it takes its time playing out, and it played out beautifully. I told you we were going to get a rally back up. We got it on the light volume during the holiday, and now we've given it all back on NASDAQ. But we've coming down to this trend line. Take a look at this trend line that broke. I warned you about this rising wedge and this trend line. It broke. We gapped down. We broke the 10 and 20 period with one big swoop, dropping 3%. We'll see if we attempt to fill that gap or go lower and then try to fill the gap, which warned you about the MACD rollover there. People all over social media shocked that this happened because, again, it's not supposed to happen. Again, if we continue to drop, you've got this little miniature head and shoulders here. You could drop down to the other trend line. Again, if we include the shadow, and you've got this larger head and shoulders. If we just continue to see selling, again, no guarantee we fill the gap right now. We may do it on a later date, but if we do attempt to do it, sellers are going to be lurking up there, but you're breaking down from this rising wedge and nice MACD rollover. A beautiful triple divergence here with momentum. I talked about this earlier in the week. NASDAQ daily chart here.